enw fi yw Melanie, a mae'n braint mawr cael bod fan hyn heddi yn siarad gyda chi yn codi'r panel yma. Dros y 2 diwrnod diwetha, mae nhw wedi bod, dwi'n credu 2 pwnc mae pawb wedi bod yn trafod, sef faint mor twym ydy hi, a faint mor braf mae i fod nôl ar maes y sioe ar ôl colli 2 flynedd. Tro diwetha, mae pethau wedi newid yn fawr iddo fi ers tro diwetha bues i ar y maes yn 2019. Felly pryd hynny, prif swydd fi dros wythnos y sioe oedd cadw ceffyl yn glân neu cario bagiau fy nhad cu fi. Ac eleni, dwi wedi bod yn treulio 2 diwrnod diwetha yn cadarnhau mai fi yw'r merch o ffermio, a wedyn ymddiheurio mai nid meunir ydw fi yw'r llall. Pan cymeres i y swydd ar ffermio, oedd sawl person wedi gofyn iddo fi beth oedd hi'n gobeithio dod i'r raglen. A fy ateb i bob tro yw pwysleisio faint mor bwysig mae lleisiau ifanc i Gymru ac i'r diwydiant yma. Felly, gyda hwnna am y meddwl, mae'n fraint cael bod yma heddi gyda panel o siaradwyr ifanc sydd yn ymgyrchu dros materion eu hunain, dim jyst yn y diwydiant amaeth, ond mewn sawl sector fan hyn yng Nghymru. Felly, dwi'n mynd i gofyn i bob un cyflwyno eu hunain, felly mynd i dechrau gyda Cerys.
Shemai, hello. My name is Cerys Harts. I am chairman of the Wales YFC Youth Forum. My main issues are mental health, as I'm currently a member of the Welsh Youth Parliament on behalf of Wales YFC as a partner organisation. So it's been really nice to work with some of the young people on the subject of mental health, and obviously being in YFC, agriculture is something really important to me, and getting the voices of young people heard in agriculture and rural areas.
Diolch yn fawr, Cerys. Cerys.
Shmai pawb, enw yw Cerys Rhys, a dwi'n is-gadeirydd y Fforwm Ieuenctid Cymru. Bys ni'n dweud mai materion sy'n mwy o pwysig i fi yw, wel, gan fod fi'n cynrychioli y cyffi falle amaethyddiaeth, ond hefyd y system addysg yng Nghymru, ac yn gwneud yn siŵr bod hynny yn dysgu ein plant ifanc ni fel dylai fe bod. Fel mae Cerys newydd dweud, mae'n braf bod fan hyn i cynrychioli y cyffi a ffermwyr ifanc, a gobeithio byddwn ni'n gwneud job da o hynny heddiw.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Alicia?
Shemai, Alicia Scott Dewis. Heddiw gyda Keep Wales Tidy as Youth Ambassador, a canu reggae, a mae gen i sioe BBC Radio Wales nos Iau. Dwi'n dysgu siarad Cymraeg am biti 6 mis, ond heddiw siarad Saesneg, just in case.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Ac Elen?
Heia, Elen Jones, dwi'n wreiddiol o Ynys Môn, ond yn astudio yn Prifysgol Abertawe. Dwi'n astudio Cymraeg a cyfryngau ac ar fy ail mlwyddyn, ac dwi yn vlogiwr a dros iechyd meddwl. Felly yn amlwg y materion dwi yn trafod ac sy'n bwysig i ni yw'r iechyd meddwl ac y pwysigrwydd o iechyd meddwl ymysg pobl ifanc, a cael y sgwrs wedi i normaleiddio mewn ffordd ymysg pobl ifanc.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i'r 4 ohonoch chi. Felly, newn ni mynd ati i dechrau ateb y cwestiynau. Nawr, nath y cwestiynau yma cael ei ddanfon mewn gan bobl ifanc ar draws Cymru. Felly, mae'r pwnc cyntaf, pwnc fawr, yw newid hinsawdd ar amgylchedd. Dwi'n siŵr bod hwnna'n teimlo fatha pwnc llosg dros yr wythnos yma. Mae'n drwg gen i am y pun. Felly, dwi'n mynd i ddechrau gyda'r cwestiwn cyntaf. Felly, a ydych chi'n meddwl bod trafnidiaeth gyhoeddus yn rhy ddrud? Felly, dwi'n mynd i dechrau gyda Alicia, gyda'r un yma, fel llysgennad o Keep Wales Tidy.
I think now it's not as accessible as it was, especially to young people. I'm not sure on the percentage of who uses the travel the most, but I know for my age group now, a lot of people would more than likely use things like Uber and those kind of things, and then they're taking away the mass travel, and it's more travel on the roads from different vehicles and different things like that, and obviously that's making more of an issue. So I think obviously if the prices were younger, because they weren't too expensive when in my day, So I think as the prices have risen, it's not as accessible for young people, especially to use public transport.
Carys, fel rhywun sy'n, fel chi o cyffi, yng nghefn gwlad, falle mae'r trafnidiaeth ddim ar gael heb sôn am fod mor rhydd.
Yn gymys, na beth o'n i'n mynd i dweud. Mae ddim hyd yn oed fel chat am os mae'n rhy drud, mae jyst ddim na o gwbl. Os ti'n byw yn y cefn gwlad fel dwi yn, mae'n bron yn amhosibl i cael trafnidiaeth cyhoeddus i unrhyw le. O'n i arfer mynd i'r ysgol ar trafnidiaeth cyhoeddus, ac oedd rhaid fi talu oherwydd oedd y cyngor ffili wneud bus passes digon gyflym oherwydd oedd cymaint o demand amdano nhw. A dwi'n meddwl mae pethau fel yna, falle oedd yn rhy drud, ond os mae'r system yn mynd i gweithio, os mae'r services yn mynd i gweithio, sdim ots gen i talu y pris amdano nhw. Ond dwi ddim yn siŵr ble mae'r arian ni'n mynd, oherwydd, yn enwedig yn y cefn gwlad, mae'r dim byd i dangos am yr arian mae pawb yn gwario. So mae'n yn buses, a mae'r Heart of Wales line am trains, ond mae hwnna ddim really yn werthu llawer o pobl. Os dwi'n byw yn Aberhonddu, os o'n i eisiau mynd i rhywle fel, o'n i wedi mynd i Shrewsbury ar y tren, cwbl o diwrnodau yn ôl, ac oedd rhaid i fi mynd lan i Llandrindod Wales i cael tren. A dwi'n meddwl, efallai mae'n yn dangos bod ddim hyd yn oed yn rhy drud, mae jyst ddim yn accessible i pobl ifanc, yn enwedig os ti'n ffili gyrru yn rhywle.
I fod yna'r un profiad gen i chdi, Elen, ond i gallu bod ti'n nodio.
Yn sicr, wel dwi'n byw yn amlwch, dwi'n byw ar ffarm yng nghefn gwlad yn Smôn, a yn amlwg dos na'm trena, mond yn mynd i Caergybi, ond fel rhywun sydd wedi symud i brifysgol i Abertawe, mae'r mater o gael tren adra, mae o'n gormod o ffaff. Mae'n rhy drud i ddechrau ddo, mae'n tua 80 pint i fynd nôl ymlaen. A mae hynny weithiau efo reilcad yr un student up to 25, ac yn sicr mae hwnna'n rhywbeth dwi'n mynd fodlon talu. Dyna yn union dwi'n mynd i fynd anghar, achos mae'n gymaint tratach. Ac wedyn, hyd yn oed os dwi yn cael tren adra, mae mam gorfod dod nôl fi o'r Holyhead neu Bangor, felly mae hynna tua hanner awr o adra, felly dwi'n credu bod ddigon o accessibility, fel ych chi'n dweud, i gefn gwlad Cymru ymysg y trafnidiaeth.
Beth amdano chdi, Carys, yw trafnidiaeth yn rhywbeth rwy'n ti'n teimlo bod gennych chdi mynediad i?
Personally, I think I completely relate to both the previous points about being able to have access to public transport, because I know that where I live, it's being cut, like your bus stops are being cut from around like the town areas, and it's only like within a town now you can travel from town to town, but whereas people like me who are going to have to travel from rural areas to get to these places, it's virtually impossible to like go and meet with friends in a town unless you're traveling by car. And also I think that what you said about the money, where the money is going, because more and more young people are using public transport as like an alternative to traveling in the car because it's better for the environment. And obviously there's lots of scientific research and factual information that's been like able to back this. And I think that it's so important that the money that people are paying now to use as public transport is used to extend that to rural areas. And I think that would be the best way forward, moving forward as a country, better for the environment and better for accessibility for young people in rural areas.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Wel, mae'r cwestiwn nesaf yn priodol iawn am y cyfnod sych a pwysig gennym ni ar hyn o bryd. Maen nhw'n gofyn sut y gallwn ni ddiogelu ein dŵr i sicrhau cyflenwad yn ystod cyfnodau sych. Rhywbeth ni'n siŵr fi rhaid i ni gyd poeni amdano tipyn mwy wrth i gwlad ni mynd yn mwy a mwy poeth. Elen, dwi'n mynd i dod i chdi yn gyntaf ar hynny.
Wel, yn sicr, mae angen sylwi fel mae'n boiling heddiw a mae wedi bod ystyddiau. Wel, digon doniol, ni'n cael sgwrs am hyn ar y ffordd lawr bore yma, efallai achos bod y tywyd poeth mae o'n ofnadwy, y tywyd poethau mae wedi gael ers blynyddoedd. Oedd mam Nghared yn sôn am fel hosepipe ban, a'n sicr fyddai hwnna gorau bod yn rhywbeth sylweddol y byddai'n cael ei ystyried, ond dwi'n credu bod pobl angen ceisio lleihau defnydd o dŵr a mond yn amlwg mae angen efo digon o dŵr, ond yn amlwg mae angen sicrhau bod ni yn wneud yn siŵr bod yna ddigon yn enwedig yn y tywyd poeth yma i bara.
Alicia, yw hwnna'n rhywbeth wyt ti'n meddwl bod bobl yn mynd i bod yn poeni amdano tipyn mwy? Dyn ni'n cael y cyfnodau syth mae'r tywyd neis, ond am gefn dy feddwl, dwi'n meddwl am y newid hinsawdd a pam mae hwn yn digwydd.
Definitely. I think as well, it's about making changes and being a bit more conscious about what we're using. For example, the minor change is how many people brush their teeth and leave the tap on for the whole time they're brushing their teeth. We've only used the water at the beginning and at the end. So small changes like that, I believe, as many people that would do that would then make a difference.
Beth am gyda chdi, Cerys?
I think I completely agree with the whole thing about brushing your teeth and leaving the tap on. I mean, it's about these little habits that everybody have got into, and if you can break those habits, then obviously it's going to have like a multiplier effect of how beneficial it is, not only to like water supply, even like now where it's absolutely boiling, but also like in the future to sustain the environment that we have. Because personally, I know I've only been like alive for 16 years, but I don't think I've ever been as hot as I have in the past 2 days of this show.
Carys, mae hwn yn rhywbeth, mae'n elfen ychwanegol i ffermwyr ifanc hefyd, achos nid jyst ni sy'n angen y dŵr, ond anifeiliaid ni hefyd.
Dwi'n meddwl mae hyn yn cwestiwn diddorol iawn. Un dwi heb rili meddwl amdano fe, ddim yn siŵr am pawb arall ar y panel. Yn enwedig nawr, dwi'n meddwl mae dŵr jyst yn cael ei taflu at ni nawr oherwydd mae mor boeth. Ond dwi'n meddwl yn enwedig fan hyn, mae wedi bod llawer o siarad am cadw'r anifeiliaid yn ddiogel yn ystod yr amser hyn. A dwi'n meddwl mae'r sioe fan hyn yn lle rili dda i cael sgwrs hyn, yn enwedig gyda stands fel Dŵr Cymru, yn rili, mae neb yn meddwl amdano dŵr, mae jyst yn rhywbeth sy'n digwydd, a dwi'n meddwl mae Dŵr Cymru yn rili just dangos i pawb. Mae rhaid ni diogelu fe. Ti'n siarad am pan ti'n brysio dan y tŷ a troi tap ymlaen. Dwi'n meddwl dwi ddim yn siŵr sut i disgrifio fe, ond dwi'n meddwl falle fel llawn gwastraff. Fel gwlad, ni'n gwastraffu llawer o pethau. Mae hwnna'n tipyn bach i wneud efo bwyd hefyd, ond mae neb yn meddwl amdano dŵr. Dwi'n meddwl, dwi'n cofio cwbl o blynyddoedd yn ôl, oedd Dŵr Cymru yn rhoi allan timers am y cawod, a jyst yn dweud fel, dim rhaid i chi cael gawod mwy na 5 munud, so just like trio cut lawr, dwi'n meddwl, ar y dŵr. Dwi'n meddwl just pethau fel yna, a meddwl, dim just am pobl, ond fel y livestock hefyd. Na gyd sgen i'n dweud am hwnna.
Wel, wrth gwrs, ni'n adnabod bod newid hinsawdd yn cael effaith ar ein ymgylchedd ni, ond hefyd mae rhaid ni edrych ymlaen at sut i ddatrys y problemau yna hefyd. Mae Llywodraeth Cymru wedi gwneud datganiad bod gen nhw gôl o plannu coed ar 10% o dir amaethyddol yng Nghymru, a mae Owen o Wynedd yn gofyn ai plannu coed ar ffermydd yw'r ffordd orau o fynd i'r afel a newid hinsawdd. Cerys, dwi'n mynd i dechrau gyda chdi.
I think generally it's a good way to start, because obviously with climate change it's such a big and widespread issue. Like, it's not just affecting us here in Wales, it affects people globally. And I think that planting trees is a small way to be able to resolve this issue. But obviously, once you start with planting trees, it's going to increase more gradually, and you'll be doing more and more to conserve the environment. But I think planting trees is a good way to start. And obviously, with agricultural land, it doesn't only like help like with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but also with sort of insects that are generally like really beneficial to like agriculture and preserving crops, and just in agriculture in general. I think that planting trees is generally a good idea.
Eleni, hwn yn rhywbeth fysa chdi'n croesawu?
Yn sicr, dwi'n meddwl bod o'n syniad wych dechrau plannu coed ar tiroedd amaethyddol. Ond fel oeddech chi'n deud, o ran mewn un cam ymlaen, mae bob cam yn gwneud gwahaniaeth, ac yn sicr bydde hynny yn helpu. Mae angen ystyried yr holl bethau dyn ni'n ei wneud, fel defnyddio dŵr o ran cawod. Dwi'n meddwl bod bob cam bach yn mynd i helpu, a dwi'n meddwl y byddai'n syniad gwych i cael dechrau mewn ffordd ymysg tiroedd ar amaethyddol.
Alicia, wyt ti'n cytuno bod hwn yn cam dda i ddechrau gyda?
Yeah, I don't think there's a best way to start. I think starting in general is literally the best thing to do. So one implement of change will lead to another implement of change. And then growing things on the land, of course, inevitably that encourages more people to do so. My dad's side of the family is Jamaican, and I know so many people live off the land. And the saying is that look after the land will look after you. So I feel like it'll then encourage more people to do that. And then obviously you're eating off the land, that's less additives and those kind of things. And there's a whole nother story that leads on to, but I just think it's a good way to start. I wouldn't say there was a best way, I just think starting is the right thing to do.
Felly, Carys, wyt ti'n croesawu'r datblygiad yma? Mae yna rai ffermwyr falle sydd gan pryder. Wyt hwn rhywbeth wyt ti'n croesawu?
Dwi'n meddwl mae'n siom fawr i gweld sut mae'r cymuned ffarmio di heb croesawu'r like system yma. Ond dwi'n meddwl, dwi'n cynrychioli y ffermwyr ifanc, a mae llawer pryder, mae pobl yn gwydio llawer am beth sy'n mynd i digwydd i'r tir gyda polisiau hyn yn dod i mewn. Mae rhaid i'r Llywodraeth Cymru cael ei gweld i wneud rhywbeth. Mae rhaid i nhw wneud rhywbeth, oherwydd mae pawb gyda'r quotas nhw a'r pryd mae rhaid i nhw bod yn carbon neutral a pethau fel yna. Ond dwi'n meddwl mae cymaint o ffermwyr yn frustrated oherwydd mae llawer o'r fel y bai yn cael ei roi arnyn nhw, a dwi'n meddwl mae hwnna jyst ddim yn iawn. Dwi'n ddim yn siŵr beth mae'r statistics, ond mae'n tua fel 70 cwmni mawr ar draws y byd yn cynrychioli fel the most carbon emissions for the entire world. A dwi'n meddwl mae ffermwyr yn enwedig ffermwyr Cymru yn teimlo'n targeted gyda polisiau fel hyn. Dwi wedi darllen fel polisi Leslie Griffiths sy'n Cabinet Minister am amaethyddiaeth, ac sy'n mynd i dod mewn yn lle single farm payment ar ôl Brexit, nawr oherwydd ni allan o'r undebyrpiaid. A dwi'n meddwl, mae pethau fel na, ble mae ffermwyr, mae rhaid i nhw cynrychioli yr amgylchedd a dod mewn, mae polisiau newydd yn dod mewn, a mae rhaid i nhw fel enactio nhw ar y ffermydd ei hun. A mae nhw'n teimlo fel mae'r bai di cael ei roi arnyn nhw, a mae hynny ddim yn iawn. A dwi'n cytuno efo hynna, a felly, efallai na, dwi ddim yn cytuno dylen ni plannu mwy o coed. Dwi'n meddwl, efallai, dylen ni adnabod bod ddim really yn bai ffermwyr Cymraeg, necessarily, ond mae rhaid i'r Llywodraeth wneud rhywbeth. A felly, efallai, mae plannu coed just yn the best thing to do, dwi'n meddwl. So, mae'n un anodd yn enwedig dod o background ffarmio. So, yeah, na gyd dwi'n dweud am hwnna.
Felly symud o un cynllun am y dyfodol i'r llall. Mae Seren o Sir y Fflint yn gofyn sut gallwn ni atal pobl rhag taflu sbwriel. Wel, Elise, mae'n rhaid i fi ddechrau gyda chdi, achos dyma brif ymgyrch Keep Wales Tidy. Sut ydych chi'n annog bobl ddim i taflu sbwriel nhw?
I think it's also an education-based thing too. So when you learn about how that can impact the environment in different ways that are available to help with your litter, like for me, I always keep my litter with me until I get to a place where there's a bin. But then also I'm aware, obviously through the work I do with Keep Wales Tidy, of things that are not so good associated with litter. And there's times when we've been on litter picks and there's just so many things on the floor. And to me, I just feel like if we start young in schools and educate people on the impact of the environment and the things that it could be done, I think then people will be more mindful and conscious. And then you start in schools and then they go home and tell their parents, oh, we learned this in school today. So if you've missed that generation, you will catch them again through the younger generation. So I think, yeah, education in school should be implemented on the impact that it can have.
Elen, wyt ti'n teimlo fel bod na digon o gyfleusterau i bobl sydd ddim eisiau taflu sbwriel?
Dwi ddim yn credu bod na ddigon o gyfleusterau o ran dydy fel o'n profiad i, dwi'n yn gweld fel bod biniau yn digon accessible. Mae'n yn enwedig mewn llefydd penodol. Dwi'n byw yn Abertawe fel myfyrwraig a dio ddim yn neis cerdded ar hyd y strydoedd achos mae gymaint o rubbish. Ond dwi yn credu bod addysg yn mor bwysig ac dwi'n credu mai addysgu pobl arno yw'r peth orau i wneud, yn enwedig ymysg pobl ifanc. Dwi'n credu dylai rhywbeth o fewn i myfyrwyr prifysgol achos maen nhw angen bach o addysg sy'n ni'n dweud. A dwi'n credu y dylai adnoddau gwahanol i gael sicrhau bod pobl yn addysgu ac yn enwedig ymysg pobl ifanc plant ysgolion. Dwi'n meddwl bod yn sicr yn rhywbeth i bwysleisio arno. Pen o'n i'n tyfu fyny, o'n i wedi cael yn addysgu, cael rhywun fel Keep Wales Tidy'n dod i fewn i siarad amdano fo a hefyd normaleiddio mynd i godi sbwriel. Oedden ni yn neu hynny'n gyson ac o'n i o hynny wedyn di addysgu na, dwi ddim yn iawn a peryglon o ran anifeiliaid fferm hefyd, os di pobl yn taflu sbwriel ar y fferm ac dysgu pwysigrwydd gadw y llefydd yn lan a taflu sbwriel yn ddiogel.
Carys, wyt ti'n meddwl bod bobl fel yn enwedig yn hedlaeth bach mwy ifanc mor ymwybodol o'r effaith mae taflu sbwriel gallu cael ar anifeiliaid, ar amgylchedd? Ti'n meddwl bod nhw'n llai debygol o gwneud hyn?
Dwi ddim yn siŵr, really. Dwi byth di cael y sgwrs hyn gyda unrhyw un yn y caffi. Dwi'n meddwl, yn enwedig, dyn ni mwy ymwybodol o'r ffaith bod yn effeithio anifeiliaid. A dwi'n meddwl, ond dwi ddim eisiau rhoi bai ar unrhyw un. Ond os ydyn ni'n edrych ar fel y YPV a pethau, a pobl yn dod ar carafans nhw, mae cymaint o sbwriel yn cael ei gadw fyna. A ti'n edrych ar fel festivals hyn, a mae just tractors yn dod trwy, yn just cael gwared o'r tents ma. Mae pobl yn prynu nhw am 30 pint a gadw nhw fyna, oherwydd mae'n fel haws i wneud yna. Dwi'n meddwl efallai mae ffermwyr yn fwy tebygol o codi ei sbwriel ei hun. Yn enwedig, fel pethau fel y Countryside Code, maen nhw'n gwybod pa mor annoying mae o. Os mae rhywun yn dod trwy a mae walking path trwy'r KIT a maen nhw'n dod trwy ddo a gadael pethau. Dwi'n meddwl efallai. Ond, dwi'n meddwl, dwi'n cytuno llon bod addysg yn y ffordd i mynd efo pethau fel hyn. Dwi'n meddwl mae pobl wedi trio rhoi fines i pobl, ond dwi'n yn siŵr sut hyd yn oed ti'n fel poliso hwnna. Oherwydd, os ti ddim yn gweld unrhyw un wneud s dim ffordd fel rhoi'r fel punishment, so to say. Ac yn wedig, in terms of fines, mae'n falle'n sgwrs wahanol, ond maen nhw'n really just yn effeithio pobl sydd ddim gyda llawer arian. a mae pobl sydd gyda llawer o arian, mae just yn, fel, basically decriminalised at that point. Oherwydd ti gyda digon o arian i talu'n fine, so it doesn't make any difference. So, yeah, dwi'n meddwl addysg, a efallai addysg o pobl fel ffermwyr a'r ffermwyr ifanc, i sôn am sut mae'n effeithio anifeiliaid, oherwydd, mae'r amgylchedd ddim just yn y tir, mae'n pwy sy'n byw ar y tir.
Cerys, o rhywun sy'n dal yn y system addysg, wyt ti'n teimlo fel bod ti'n mynd i derbyn digon o addysg ar y mater yna?
I think personally, for me, having just come out of secondary school, I think that I don't feel like I've had enough education on like that as a topic, because obviously for me it's just sort of second nature, you know, you recycle, you dispose of litter correctly. I just don't think that even from like a young age in primary school, 3-4 years old, because they'll pick up habits quite quickly if an adult is telling them when they're younger that disposing of litter correctly is, you know, the best thing for the environment, and trying to explain that to a 3 or 4 year old, like by, you know, their parents, they're more likely to listen to someone like in like an external environment in school, and like when their friends are doing it, it's like so much easier for them, and it'll just carry on then for generations. And I think the education in that way is like so crucial in being able to tackle issues like littering, for example. And what Cara said about YPV is like, I couldn't have put it better myself. I think because myself and Caris both have roles within Wales YFC, we know how much effort and hard work that goes into planning an event like YPV, for example, and the sort of aftermath of the litter, and just people, because it's not convenient for them to take it home, so just think if they just leave it there, but then it becomes someone else's problem. And the fact that, you know, who knows, that land might be grazed on for until the winter fair, for example, so the impact it has on farmers and livestock, and then it just goes into like vet bills, and, you know, to just solve a problem that's literally as easy as taking your rubbish home. Like, I cannot stress that enough. If like, even if there's one message you have to get across, is take your rubbish home, no matter where you are in the show. Just either put it in the correct recycling bin or just take it home with you and dispose of it correctly.
Wel, un pwnc mae'r genhedlaeth ifanc bendant yn trafod mwy na mae unrhyw genhedlaeth wedi o'r blaen yw iechyd meddwl. A dyn ni'n mynd i bod yn trafod iechyd meddwl a llesiant, ac wedyn addysg ar y cwricwlwm hefyd. Felly, o'r cwestiwn cyntaf o'r hwn yw, beth yw eich barn am gynigion ar gyfer wythnos waith 4 diwrnod? Caris, dwi'n mynd i dechrau gyda chdi.
Dwi wastad di meddwl hyn. Mae diwrnod waith 4 diwrnod, dyle hwnna jyst i bod yn normal. Mae, like, productivity wise, mae pawb sydd wedi gweithio fel 5 diwrnod yr wythnos, 6 diwrnod yr wythnos, mae pawb yn gwybod bod erbyn dydd Gwener, dydd Sadwrn, dych chi ddim yn neud cymaint o waith a chi'n neud ar dydd Llun pan oedd ti wedi cael y rest ar y penwythnos. A dwi'n meddwl bydd llawer mwy, genuinely yn credu hyn, bydd llawer mwy yn cael ei gwneud yn eich swydd yn y gyrfa, ac bydd yn, well i pobl fel ei mental health. Dwi ddim yn meddwl mae'n necessary i pobl bod yn gwaith am 6 diwrnod, 5 diwrnod yr wythnos. A hefyd, dwi'n meddwl ddim hyd yn oed just mental health wise, am pobl sydd gyda plant. Mae just yn really inconvenient i llawer o pobl bod yn gwaith am 5-6 diwrnod, ac dwi'n meddwl childcare bydd yn llawer well os oedd pobl yn gallu bod adre gyda'i plant, o ddim adre gyda'i plant, allan gyda'i plant, yn lle talu cymaint am am childcare facilities, mae unrhyw un sydd gyda plant, dwi ddim, ond mae unrhyw un sydd gyda rhai, yn gwybod mae'n it costs an arm and a leg, ac a dwi really ddim yn meddwl bod yn necessary i pobl gweithio cymaint mewn un wythnos, dwi really ddim.
Elen, wyt ti'n meddwl bod hwn yn mynd i fod yn cam allweddol mwyn iechyd meddwl y cenedl?
Mae hwn yn gwestiwn rili difyr. Dwi chydig bach ar y ffens, ond dwi yn ochri fwy at, dylai bod wythnos waith o 4 diwrnod. Yn sicr, mae o'n rhywbeth y byddai'n helpu iechyd meddwl yn fawr. Mae o yn sicrhau bod yna fwy o gyfleoedd i gael amser hamdden, fwy o amser i ofalu am eich hunan, meddwl garwch, mynd ati i wneud rhywbeth fel yoga, ac yn sicr nes i edrych dipyn yn ôl ar fel trial oedd wedi cael ei wneud. Ac mi oedd o'n profi bod na 34% fwy o productivity ymysg pobl, ac yn sicr mae hynny'n dangos bod pobl yn gallu creu gwaith, mwy o waith a gwaith o ansawdd gwell gyda llai o amser yn y gwaith, ac hynny yn rhoi cyfle iddyn nhw ganolbwyntio nhw hunan a treulu roedd i amser yn y 4 diwrnod nhw yna, a wedyn pan nhw'n mynd adre wedyn cael cyfle i ymlacio, ac yn sicr dwi'n credu o ran dy perspectif di o ran y plant a arbed costa, yn sicr bydde hynny yn elfen bwysig ohono, ac beth ni siarad amdan ynghynt yr amgylchedd os chi yn dreifio i'r gwaith. Mae yna diwrnod llai i ddreifio yna ac o'na, a mae hynny'n golygu gwella yr amgylchedd hefyd. Mae hwnna'n gallu bod yn gam ymlaen. Ond o ran yr ochr arall i'r ddadl, ni all pawb gael 4 diwrnod o waith. Doctoriaid, nyrsys, pobl sy'n gweithio mewn siopa, yn sicr byddai hynny ddim yn bosibl i bawb, ac dwi'n credu bod hynny yn deg ar bawb mewn ffordd, yn enwedig mae'n heulu i, mae gynnu fi, mae'n nytherod a mae'n aunty a uncle i gyd yn gweithio ar NHS, a dwi'n gwybod gymaint sy'n nhw'n caru llai o ddiwrnodau gwaith, gymaint sy'n nhw'n caru gwaith, ond yn sicr, da chi'n gweld faint o waith maen nhw wedi roed, yn enwedig ymysg y blynyddoedd dwytha, ac yn sicr mae hynny yn elfen byddai ddim mor bosibl i bobl gymryd 4 diwrnod, a pobl efallai sydd ei angen o fwyaf o ran y trauma weithio i'r NHS a falle. Mae hwnne yn dadl yn erbyn gen i, ond dwi'n sicr yn meddwl i'r rhai sydd yn gallu i wneud fel pobl sy'n gweithio mewn swyddfeydd, yn sicr byddai yn gallu fod yn rhywbeth fuddiol iawn, yn enwedig i bobl sydd yn dioddef o broblemau iechyd meddwl ac yn rhoi cyfle i bobl wneud mwy o feddwl garwch a falle.
Cerys, pe bai athrawon ddim yn gweithio 4 diwrnod o'r wythnos, fysa disgyblion ddim yn cael addysg dros 4 diwrnod o'r wythnos. Wyt ti'n meddwl fysa hwnna'n gweithio yn weithredol?
I'm not exactly too sure because obviously I've just sat my GCSEs, and the disruption that COVID had to my learning and quite possibly maybe the outcome that I might have at GCSE, obviously it's going to be really hard if you count all those days like that you miss on a 4-day week. That would obviously total up to quite a big chunk of learning, and teachers are already under pressure as it is to be able to provide that sort of learning and all the content that you need to sit exams, for example. But I'm quite similar to the previous, and I'm really on the fence about the whole 4-day week. I think it's a really interesting proposal. I think because one of my parents works as a supervisor for the county council, and obviously he's in the office quite a bit, and I mean he finds it quite a stressful job, and obviously him having more time at home to be able to sort of wind down and relax after a day's work and not being able to sort of panic about what's going on like the next day, who's filling what pothole or something like that, for example. Whereas my mum is the manager of a care home, and that's not a job where you can take a 4-day week. Like some days she'd be in the office just sorting things out, and like there's never a break. And I think for staff who have worked through COVID it's definitely their mental health that people should be sort of focusing on. And I think although that there's been some focus by the government that the NHS and key workers, they've obviously worked through the pandemic and their mental health needs to be sort of preserved, and that everybody should have some sort of like outlet that they're able to go to. I think that just sort of since COVID sort of like obviously not died down, it's still around, but like since after lockdown, it's just sort of been brushed under the carpet, the mental health of like these workers. And I think that it's really important that we just make it an inclusive proposal that everybody's mental health will be benefited from.
Alicia, fel rhywun sy'n gweithio'n llawrydd yn y cyfryngau, wyt ti'n teimlo fel fysa'r polisi fel hyn yn cael effaith positif arnoch chdi, neu wyt ti'n poeni fysa bobl llawrydd yn cwmpo trwy'r net?
I think a 4-day working week is a great idea if you can fall into the categories that it can help with. But I do think it's not sustainable for everybody. For example, like small businesses and freelancers, that sometimes I have to work 7 days a week to make sure certain things are finished. And that's just because I work in so many different facets. But for small businesses, for example, might run a shop. Those 4 days they might be running a shop, but then what about the admin if they've got no other help? So that's a really time-consuming thing. So they have to make sure the products are okay or the stock is okay. Get back to customers who maybe like order things online, because that's quite a big thing now. And that's like, that can be mentally exhausting, especially for a small business with no help. So I think if there was to be a 4-day week, there also needs to be some kind of help in place for small businesses and things like that, to be able to sustain that. But for freelancers and people like myself, it would be nice for there to be maybe like a rise in mindfulness, for example, different trials or more things available for us. For example, like free classes and things like yoga, and that's just a small example, but just ways for us to be more mindful, to help us with productivity, just to be able to switch off, even if we couldn't make it a 4-day week, just ways to enable us to be able to relax and to kind of dip the stress levels so that it doesn't have an effect on our mental health, and so that then in turn we have more productivity. And in terms of a school 4-day week, I'm kind of in two minds about that, because I think that, again, yes, you would miss the day of schooling, but then also if you recharge, and for example, children might have extra time to spend with their parents that they might not necessarily have, that could then stimulate them, which then would encourage productivity. And then in the 4 days they do have school, it's less of a stress and pressure on the pupils, because again, especially after lockdown and things like that, there has been a lot of pressure on children to be able to, pupils, to be able to keep up with the work that they might have missed. But in the 4 days, if you really censor that on learning, and they know they're going to get a day off, which is going to be the norm, there's no fear of missing a day. And it's just ways to encourage that around that. And I think we often overlook the fact that 5 days for all those amount of hours, that's a lot of learning time, and pupils will get burnout. So I do think a 4-day working week for both pupils and for people in the working system could be a good idea. It just depends if there's support for those who don't fall into those categories.
Cerys, fysa ti'n croesawu cam I lleihau hyd y diwrnod ysgol? Wyt ti'n meddwl fysa bobl falle bach mwy weithredol, cynhyrchiol, pe bai na llai o oriau i'r diwrnod yn yr ysgol?
I think that that's actually something that could work, because I know a lot of pupils, when our school did like half days, and it was like solid 5 hours of learning and then like a half an hour break. And I know obviously you'd need more of a break, but sort of limiting that sort of time spent in school, I think pupils are more likely to engage and focus in a lesson and just sort of get things done, because they know that they'll be going home, and then there's like an opportunity then for them to like participate in leisure time activities. For example, I know me being in YFC, like YFC is a bit of a 24/7 commitment, but I think having like time to be able to like go and socialize with friends, spend time with family after COVID and the sort of social aspect that everybody sort of missed. I think it'll be beneficial for young people's mental health to be able to go out and enjoy themselves after the pandemic.
Wel, un her I iechyd meddwl sawl person yng Nghymru yw hiliaeth a profiadu hiliau. Pa fath o effaith, Alicia, wyt ti'n gweld mae hiliaeth gallu cael ar iechyd meddwl yn gyffredinol i bobl o bob oedran?
There's a number of impacts on mental health, and again, the way as a child you might see yourself, and it depends also what kind of circumstances you're in. I know for me in primary school, that I was in a predominantly white class, and one child said they didn't want to sit by me because to them my skin was dirty, and I was 7 years old when someone said this to me, and then I didn't realize I was different to everybody else until that moment. So then as you grow, you are always mindful that you're different to everybody else. And then also I've heard the question a lot of times in how young is too young to teach children about racism, but it's never too young for us to experience it. So I think it's good for the new curriculum that's going to be in place, and I'm hoping that does help to encourage people to just learn about different cultures and learn about different ways of life, which I then think will help this. But yeah, it has a massive impact on your mental health, because if you feel isolated from everybody else, how then do you grow and learn the same as everybody else? So there's so many different avenues to that, but yeah, I'm hoping that the changes are happening and being implemented to be able to stop this from happening.
Carys, sut ydyn ni'n mynd ati fel cenedl i cael gwared o hiliaeth yng Nghymru?
Dwi ddim yn meddwl os ydw i'n y person i gofyn am pethau fel yna, ond dwi'n gwybod fel y cyffi, o'n i'n cael sgwrs ddoe efo aelod, a oedd hyn yn y context o'r LGBTQIA+, ond mae'n debyg fel o'n i'n sôn am cael inclusivity and diversity officer am Cyfi Cymru, pethau fel yna. Dwi'n gwybod mae hynny'n hynod o pwysig, oherwydd dwi'n meddwl yn enwedig yn ardaloedd gwledig, falle os ti'n aelod o minority group, mae'n hyd yn oed mwy isolating na os ti o llefydd eraill, yn enwedig yn y cymuned ffermio. A dyn ni wastad yn dweud, you don't have to be a farmer to be a young farmer. A mae hwnna'n wir am popeth. You don't have to be anything to be a young farmer except a willing participant. A dwi'n meddwl mae hwnna'n hanod o pwysig yn gwneud yn siŵr bod pobl o minority groups yn teimlo yn cyfforddus i dod i cyffi a cael amser nice. Mae'n cymuned i bobl, ac os ti'n teimlo fel outlier neu outsider yn ardaloedd gwledig, mae'n pwysig i cael sense of community. A dwi'n meddwl fel Cyfi Cymru mae rhaid i ni wneud mwy i helpu pobl sy'n teimlo fel yna, ac dwi'n meddwl gobeithio yn y dyfodol byddwn ni yn gwneud mwy i.
Un peth nes I profiadu pan o'n i'n ifanc ac yn yr ysgol oedd y ffaith pan o'n i'n cael gwersi ar pethau fel hyn, fel hiliaeth. O'n i'n cael ein sortio mewn I grŵp bach, a bobl fel fi oedd yn lleiafrif ethnig oedd yn cael y gwersi ar sut I cael gwared o hiliaeth. A y peth oedd yn mynrysu I, o'n i'n meddwl, wel, nid ni yw'r problem. Nid ni sy'n achosi'r hiliaeth yma. A dwi'n gobeithio wir bod yr addysg yn falle bach mwy eang nawr yn yr ysgol. Carys, wrth bod yn yr ysgol, wyt ti'n teimlo fel bod ti'n cael yr addysg yna ar sut mae hiliaeth gallu cael ei ymlygu?
I think that it's very similar to the sort of education that's being provided surrounding like recycling and litter, for example. I think it is so important that this is taught to young people especially, because as a teenager, I'm not trying to stereotype teenagers, but often they can be quite arrogant and like that they think that they are right. And I think that it's so important for everybody to have like such like a diverse sort of mindset, and that obviously being in a rural area, it's not like assuming that everyone's a farmer, you know, it's like really important that people are educated on things that might offend people, that might cause harm, and like isolate people. I think that it is so important that everybody learns about that. I also think that the education system, obviously now that it's being sort of, the curriculum's being developed and the new curriculum will come into place, I think that for younger generations that are coming up through primary and secondary school, I think it'll benefit them positively, because they'll have a more inclusive and diverse mindset before even like going out into the wider world. And I think that that's something, as someone who's gone through like a generation of school where that nothing like that has been taught, obviously like the bare minimum, but like it's now that it's been set in stone that it's something that has to be taught. I think that it'll benefit young people going into the wider world and going into sort of social and employment settings. And I definitely think that that's something that I would have like benefited from going through the school system here in Wales.
Eleni, ti'n neud gwaith anhygoel o ymgylchu dros y diogelu iechyd meddwl a rhannu straeon personol iawn dy hunan. Wyt ti'n teimlo cyfrifoldeb i hunan addysgu am sut mae pethau fel hiliaeth gallu cael effaith ar iechyd meddwl bobl eraill?
O, yn sicr, fel person gwyn, yn amlwg dwi ddim person gorau i ofyn y cwestiwn hwn, ond yn sicr dwi yn cefnogi fel yr ymgais Black Lives Matter, o'n i'n cefnogi hwnna drwyddi draw, ac yn sicr mae profi hiliaeth yn gallu cael gymaint o effaith ar iechyd meddwl rhywun. Felly yn sicr mae'n bwysig i addysgu am y pynciau eang sydd yn cael effaith ar iechyd meddwl pobl. A dwi'n credu bod dylai'r addysg yna cael mewn ffordd i roed i blant yn yr ysgol gynradd, fel o'ch chi'n deud, it's never too young, i addysgu pobl, ac yn sicr dylai fwy cael ei ystyried mewn addysg a cwricwlwm, yn enwedig yn y blynyddoedd dwytha, gan bod fwy o ymwybyddiaeth a mwy o bethau wedi cael ei gynyddu drost y protestio a felly, y Black Lives Matter. Dwi'n credu byddai addysg amdan bywyda di yn bwysig iawn hefyd, ac yn sicr dwi'n credu bod fwy yn cael ei wneud, ac yn sicr dwi'n meddwl bod yn bwysig i bobl ifanc siarad am eu profiadau. Dwi yn gwybod, fel dwi wedi darllen, dwi'n cofio henw hi wan, oedd nath hi siarad amdan iechyd meddwl a hitha wedi profi hiliaeth, a dwi'n credu bod pobl yn siarad yn agored am eu profiadau hefyd yn mynd i helpu bobl i ystyn allan, ac hefyd i sylweddoli di hynny ddim yn iawn, dydy ddim yn iawn i bobl deud hynny, ac i sefyll fyny ac i siarad efo rywun os ydyn nhw yn profi hynny hefyd.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Wel, ni ddim yn symud ymlaen i'r cwestiwn ola ni. Un peth mae genhedlaeth ni wedi gorfod delio gyda fel plant yw cyfryngau cymdeithasol. Wrth gwrs, mae'r cyfryngau cymdeithasol heb bod yn biti am hir iawn, a falle mae ni yw'r genhedlaeth cyntaf sydd wedi gorfod cael plentyndod sydd yn cynnwys defnyddio y cyfryngau cymdeithasol. Cerys, wyt ti'n teimlo fel bod cael digon o ganllawiau yna i ddiogelu chdi fel person ifanc ar y cyfryngau cymdeithasol?
I think that safeguarding young people on social media is something that often gets like overlooked. Obviously, like it's really important, and like parents obviously understand the risks of their child like sort of signing up to a social media platform in like the sense of like safeguarding them in other aspects, but I think they often overlook the safeguarding of their child's mental health when joining a social media like site. Because I know for me, the fact that going onto social media and seeing like celebrities that have been airbrushed and sort of filtered to look a certain way, it's, for me especially, like you feel like you have to look that way. And I think that sort of body inclusivity is something that should be promoted more on social media, because I know a lot of me and my friends are like quite sort of into the sort of body positivity movement, and I think that it's really important that social media is a way that promotes a sort of healthy body image, because otherwise I know a lot of my friends over the past few years have gone through like sort of eating disorders, and it's horrible. And like, as a 14-year-old, I shouldn't have been going to school and having to worry whether my best friend was eating. Like, that's not something that as a 14-year-old I should be worrying about. I should be worrying about, you know, where are we going to go shopping on the weekend? But I think that parents and children as well who are signing up for social media should be aware of the impact that social media can have on mental health, because I think often it gets brushed under the carpet.
Carys, yn sydyn, wyt ti'n teimlo bod na digon fyna i dy diogelu di?
Na, dwi ddim. Mae rhaid i fi cytuno efo Carys. Mae cymaint o pethau yn sôn am y peryglon gyda, ddim yn siŵr, fel pobl sy'n mwy hyn y ti, reaching out to you on Snapchat a pethau fel yna. Ond yeah, mae'r real danger yn eich hun a beth ti'n gweld ar y platforms yna, a sut ti'n fel reacto i rhain. Ac dwi'n meddwl, yeah, dwi wastad yn like advocating for body neutrality, ble mae just pobl yn edrych fel pobl, a mae rhaid i ni gyd just cytuno efo hwnna. Ac yeah, dwi'n meddwl, sdim digon, eto, dyn ni wedi reid llawer o weithiau ar y panel heddiw, ond mae just am addysg, beth ti'n gweld ar cyfryngau cymdeithasol, mae ddim yn gwir rhan fwyaf ono fe, a beth ti'n gweld pan ti'n siarad i eich ffrindiau, siarad i pobl fel hyn, dyna'r gwir, a dyna beth mae pobl yn edrych fel, a dyna sut dylech chi trin eich gilydd, dwi'n meddwl.
Alicia, be hoffech chi weld yn cael ei gyflwyno i diogelu y plant yma sydd yn defnyddio'r apps cyfryngau cymdeithasol?
A lot of things. I think we were just given internet and just everybody just had to wing it. No, there was no guide of any kind, and nobody even really knew how to figure it out. We just had to get on with it. And then social media came along, and don't get me wrong, for me, for work purposes, it can be a very positive thing, and it's able to spread messages of things that I think are really important and that kind of stuff. So it is a positive space for that. But also there are lots of negatives. For example, like bullying online is a massive thing. And when you're a young person, you might be in school and you're online social media, because pretty much everybody is, and you might be being harassed online or something like that, and you might feel like you're so alone, and then that spirals into that can hurt your mental health and those kind of things. And sometimes you don't want to tell people that that's what you're going through, or sometimes you don't know how to deal with what the issue is or how you can solve it, and there's really no way of, there's no educational things in place to be able to know what to do. So if this is happening to you, what do I do? If that's happening to you, what do I do? It's just kind of get on with it, and no one really knows what we're doing. And again, we were talking about airbrushing and body positivity and things like that, and it can be such a scary place, especially for young people, when they're seeing people who actually may look very different in real life, and then you might think, oh, there's something wrong with me because I don't look this way, but they also look the same way, but online they don't. So you're seeing images that often can be untrue, and then that affects your self-esteem, affects your mental health and things like that. But again, it's just guidance, body positivity. There's so many movements of body positivity now, and I really love to see it. But yeah, definitely more education within schools. Again, because it's a new thing, maybe that's the reason why it hasn't been added to the curriculum, but it's such a vital thing of everybody's everyday life that I think it's really important for it to be added to, even to the curriculum, sorry. Again, because it's such a big part of society now, and then if we tackle the issues of social media within younger people, then it continues for generations, and we kind of know, without having to wing it, how to make it a safe space.
Elen, y gair ola i chdi, mae yna ddau ochr i hwn, dwi'n siŵr, ar un ochr dych chi'n rhannu negeseuon am iechyd meddwl, dwi'n siŵr fysa'r ymgyrch ddiogelu iechyd meddwl heb bod mwy llwyddiannus, heb y cyfryngau cymdeithasol. Ond wedyn weithio'r her mwyaf i iechyd meddwl yw'r cyfryngau cymdeithasol. Sut wyt ti fel blogiwr a vlogiwr yn dod dros hynny?
Yn sicr mae hwn yn rhywbeth fi bach neu canol amdano. Yn sicr mae cyfryngau cymdeithasol mewn ffab i fi o ran helpu cael y neges allan i rhannu fy profiad a hefyd i gael bobl eraill i rhannu profiadau efo nhw. Mae gennym fi gyfrif Instagram ar gyfer iechyd meddwl a blogio a codi'r ymwybyddiaeth a hefyd gwefan lle mae'r blogiau gyd yn cael eu bostio ar nhw. Felly mae hynny wedi bod yn elfen ffantastig o'r cyfryngau cymdeithasol. Ond yn sicr dwi'n cytuno efo bob dim ar genod wedi dweud o ran cyfryngau cymdeithasol o body positivity a pobl yn teimlo bod nhw angen edrych ffordd penodol. Dwi yn un sydd yn wneud hynny hefyd. Yn sicr dwi'n ffeindio fy hyn yn sgrolio trwy Instagram am oriau, jyst yn busnesu a gweld a jyst wneud, mae ffordd jyst yn ffeindio'r rheswm i wneud fy hyn teimlo yn really rubbish ac swn i wedi gallu jyst cael ap lawr a peidio gwneud hynny. Felly mae yna bwysau ar pobl ifanc o ran y cyfryngau cymdeithasol, ond dwi'n credu bod mae yna bobl sydd yn gwneud pethau da o ran y cyfryngau cymdeithasol fel cyfrif Hiwti, mae hitha yn wneud lot o ran codi'r ymwybyddiaeth, body positivity a mae hynny'n really nice gweld achos dydy cyfryngau cymdeithasol a Instagram, dio ddim yn bywyd go iawn. Felly dwi'n mynd all pan bod gymaint o bobl yn credu dylai cuddiad y ffordd maen nhw go iawn a da chi mond yn gweld fod 10% o bywyd y person yna bod o'n edrych yn ffantastig las o bod nhw'n cael diwrnod really rubbish a dyn nhw ddim yn rhannu bob dim ac felly dwi'n credu bod mae'n eitha anodd i fi ochri fo naill ochr mewn ffordd ond dwi yn gweld bod y ddau yn eitha hafal ac i fi fel dwi'n creu cynnwys digidol i Brifysgol Abertawe a felly mae hwnna wedi helpu o ran gallu creu gwaith ac gallu gweithio. Felly mae yna dwy ochr eitha cryf iddo ond dwi yn gweld gymaint o bwysau sydd ar pobl ifanc o ran iechyd meddwl nhw a cyfryngau cymdeithasol.
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn i'n peder panelydd ni. Diolch yn fawr iawn i Senedd Ieuenctid a Senedd Ieuenctid am cynnal Hawl i Holi yma. Mi fydd recordiad o hyn ar gael ar y cyfryngau cymdeithasol ac wrth gwrs diolch yn fawr iawn i pawb sydd wedi bod yn gwylio. Yn diolch eto. Diolch yn fawr.